The next step is to apply physique to the mesh so we can associate the biped with the mesh. So the first thing we have to do is unfreeze the mesh. We can do that by just doing a right click and unfreeze all. And it doesn't matter whether we leave the mesh as see-through, but let's turn it off for now. So we select it and click Alt-X. Okay, now we need to apply physique as a modifier. So on the Modify panel, pick the physique modifier from the modifier list. And now the next step is we're going to need to click on the center of mass, so we need to be able to see it. So we'll change back to wireframe, zoom in, and then we click this Attach to Node button right here on the physique rollout, and right after that, click the center of mass. This physique initialization dialog comes up, and for the most part you just want to leave the default settings the way they are. They're fine for now. Click Initialize. After a few moments you see this orange skeleton line that has been put through the entire mesh. You can see it going through the arms, down the fingers, down the legs, and so on. You want to make sure that you can actually see the tips of the orange skeleton coming through on the fingers and the toes, because that means that you've done it correctly. So physique is applied. It looks pretty good. So the next step is to check the envelopes and see how they're working. Now what an envelope is here, if we expand our physique sub-objects, the first one is envelope. And this is the area around each bone that is affected by the bone. For example, we click the upper arm bone here, and we can see this sort of capsule-shaped thing around the arm. The vertices in the mesh that are within this capsule are going to be affected by this bone, and so on with other bones. You can select them, and the vertices will turn red to show you that they're going to be affected. So what we need to do next is make sure that the envelopes are all set up correctly so that the mesh will deform correctly. And the best way to do that is to go ahead and animate the biped a little bit. So we're going to, on frame 0, let's select the biped. As long as we've got it selected, let's make a named selection set for it. And let's go ahead to the motion panel and set a key. Now for some reason the selections under the motion panel aren't coming up. That's because there's something selected that isn't really part of the biped. If we go to select by name, you'll see that this object gets selected sometimes called BIP01 footsteps. We don't want that to be selected because it's a footstep object, even though it begins with BIP, and so it's going to prevent the options from showing up on the motion panel when it's selected. So we unselect that, and now our options come up. So this also means we need to change our named selection set. So if we go to Edit, Named Selection Sets, pick Biped, and we want to subtract. Select this and then subtract it. Great. Okay, so now our selection set is working. Ooh, I don't want that turned on. Okay. So what we want to do is set a key for all of these things on frame 0. So we need to get out of figure mode, and under the key info rollout, with the biped selected, there we go, key info rollout, we can click the set key button. And that will set a key for all the biped parts on frame 0. Now you have to do that because unlike 3ds Max, when you go and animate the character on a frame other than 0, it's not going to automatically set a key for you. So you have to set the key at 0 and then animate it later. So on frame 10, what I'm going to do is take the legs and scissor them apart with the auto key button on. So one leg back and one leg forward, and this will allow me to see if the feet envelopes are working properly, and it looks like they are. Now I'm also going to take the hands, make sure I've got the hand and not a finger, and move in the view, move one up. Now I want to select the other hand. The easiest way to do that is to come here to track selection and click opposite, and now the opposite link is selected, and I can put that down here. So now when I pull the time slider, I see the arms and legs moving. So far looks pretty good. One problem you might have with something like this is that pieces of the feet are staying stuck to the ground, or pieces of the fingers stay behind, and you would fix that with envelopes, which we'll look at in just a minute. This is a good time to save, so let's go ahead and save this with the plus sign. When working with envelopes, there are some common problems that come up with the fingers and feet that we haven't had with this one, so we're going to take a look at that in a moment, but let's look a little closer at these envelopes here. If I select this envelope, take a close-up look at it, one of the things you can change easily with an envelope is its radial scale, pretty much its diameter, and that parameter is down here, radial scale, and if you increase that, the size of the envelope increases, which increases the number of vertices that are being affected by that bone. You can also change the parent overlap, which makes the envelope bigger or smaller in the direction of the parent object to the bone, and child overlap, which extends it in the direction of the child object. So between these three, you can make quite a number of changes to the envelope and where it sits and what it affects. Now let's take a look at a problem with the fingers that often happens. Just going to load another file here to have a look. And here you can see that as I pull the time slider, you look in the front viewport and you get this kind of taffy thing happening where the parts of the fingers, a few vertices, are staying still. That's because some of the envelopes in this area aren't big enough and they aren't encompassing these vertices. These vertices actually aren't being affected by any bone, so they're just staying still when the animation goes on. So let's see if we can figure out which bone is the one that's being affected, and we'll change its envelope. So we select this, go to the envelope subobject, and looking around, it looks like it's that index finger there on the end, this one. So if we come down and increase the radial scale, you can see the vertices pop right back into place. So now that works fine. So let's go back to our earlier version. So as we said before, the hands and feet in this work pretty well, but there are some areas that need some help. First of all, it doesn't look like this tail area is being affected by anything, so we need to fix that up. Also, the thighs and the hip areas, this is always a problem, or an area of concern, I should say, when you're animating characters. You want to make it so that the hip doesn't look like it's breaking, or that you got to make it look smooth. And right now the legs are moving, but the hips aren't really changing accordingly. So we can fix that up by working with the envelopes a bit. Shoulders are another area that sometimes give you trouble. These actually look pretty good, but we can probably fix it up. Oh, if you look under here in the armpit area, that's not working too well. We need to fix that up. In order to fix the envelopes effectively, we need to be able to see what they're affecting. The easiest way to do that is in your envelope subobject, scroll down here and turn on this shaded option. Now this turns the entire character gray, but what this does do is if we select an envelope now, the area that's affected by the envelope will be shaded, and we can see the area itself and what it looks like. We can see which vertices are being affected, and the red color tells us what area of the mesh is being affected by that envelope. So in taking a look at the thighs here, we can see that there's a very definite cutoff here where these vertices are affected by the envelope, but the ones next to it aren't affected at all. The red indicates that the vertices are completely affected by the envelope. And then you have some different colors, blue and yellow and so on, that show up when the vertices are partially affected. And we don't have anything like that showing up here. And that's what we need here in this thigh area, so that when the leg bends like that, when it rotates, we want this area up here in the hips to partially respond, but not too much. So let's take a look at how we can make that happen. One thing we can start with is just try increasing the radial scale. And you see that the envelope starts to affect other areas of the body. We see a bit of blue down here on the lower leg. And what that tells us is that the lower leg envelope is affecting these vertices mostly, but this upper one is affecting it a little bit. That's okay for now. Let's not worry about that. I'm more concerned with this hip area up here. It's all totally red. So what that tells you is that no other vertices, or rather no other parts of the biped are affecting this hip area. So something needs to be worked on here. The spine bone should be affecting the hip area, holding it still to some degree, while this leg rotating will affect it to some degree. Right now, we've got nothing affecting up here. So let's take a look at this in the front view. As with everything else in Character Studio, it's a matter of working back and forth. So now we're going to take a look at this bone right here in the middle. If we click here, this is the lowest bone in the whole thing. There's a link right there, and this whole area right here is what's being affected by that bone. And you can see that the red part of the envelope and the purple part of the envelope, neither of those extend all the way out to encompass the whole thing. Now what we have here is we have two parts to the envelope. This red part is called the inner envelope, and the purple part is called the outer envelope. Now the area inside the red envelope gets as much influence, means the bone is going to influence the mesh as much as possible, and then the influence falls off gradually until it reaches the purple boundary, and then outside of that there's no influence. So the majority of the influence is inside the red envelope. Here we don't have anything going on. I mean, there's a couple of vertices that are being affected by this. Maybe just a few, but hardly any. So let's increase the radial scale of that. And you can see that since this both is turned on here, it's going to increase the radial scale for both the inner and the outer envelope. You can also just turn on one or the other of these, and it will affect just the one envelope. Now we also want it to affect this whole hip area, so we need to extend the envelope down, and the way we do that is with the parent overlap. Okay, let's take a look at the shaded, see how this looks. Oh, it's looking much better. We've actually got some influence going on here. It's affecting the hip and the thigh area. Oh, that's good. Okay, let's see how this looks with the animation now. It's better. It's better. Still, we've got kind of an intense crease going on over here. So let's try this again with this bone here. We can increase the radial scale and see now this area in the front is partially affected by the leg joint and partially affected by the hips, which is more in line with what we want. Now you can also move this out to frame 10, to the most extreme part of the animation, and play with the radial scale there and see how it affects it. Now we've got a bit of a problem here. If we increase the radial scale to this much, we have sort of a nice smooth transition here at the hip. It's not too bad. But then it starts to affect the other leg, and that's not good. So obviously we need something other than radial scale to try and sort this out. See, with the radial scale, it affects the entire envelope. It makes it bigger or smaller. We just want it to pull out in a couple of little places, not the entire envelope. To adjust an envelope so that part of it sticks out more than the other, not the whole thing getting larger, but to change its shape essentially, what you need to do is use control points. If you scroll up here on your envelope, in your envelope sub-object, under the blending envelopes rollout, this button called link, that's automatically pressed as soon as you come into the envelope sub-object. This is what's on by default, and this allows you to select different envelopes within the character. What we want to use is this one over here called control point. So if we click this, you'll see that all of a sudden now you have these little points all over your envelopes. Now what you have here is on every envelope there are these circles going through them. These are called cross sections. And by default there's 2 cross sections in each envelope. And where the cross section intersects the actual envelope, the circular area around it, you get a control point. You see how that is? It's kind of like a cage that defines the envelope. So what we can do here is we can select some of these points and pull them out to make the envelope bigger or smaller at certain points. Well, there's going to be one in there that we want to grab, so let's go back to wireframe, and there it is right there. Actually, we'll grab this one, and yep, there's another one there on the inner envelope that we want. So we're going to switch back to smooth and highlights here, and we pull these in so that that part of the envelope no longer affects the other leg. See that? And it will only let you pull the points in certain directions. It's just pretty much in toward the center or out away from the center, so you don't have to worry about pulling them in some strange direction. Let's take these here and see how. Let's pull those in a little bit there. And we can also take these up top and pull them outward if we want to. That means we have to pull these inward again, if we can find them. Actually, that looks pretty good, just the way it is. Let's see how it looks with the animation. Oh, look at that. No more big creasy thing when the leg comes up. So you have a nice, smooth area right there. That's nice. So that's what control points can do for you. They give you much finer control over the envelope and its shape. This is especially important in this hip area. So now that we've got that one leg envelope looking pretty much the way we want it to, let's copy and paste it to the other side. Now before we do that, what we want to do is turn off this control point, and the way we do that is just click link again. That's kind of important, otherwise you won't be able to pick anything in a minute. And then if we scroll down, you'll see that we have, under edit commands, we have copy and paste. And this is for copying and pasting links, for copying and pasting the envelopes around the links. So let's copy this one. And let's get a really good look at what's going on here. If we switch this to a front view and then go back to frame 0, now we can really see the shape of this envelope. So we'll be able to see if it's being properly pasted on the other side. So we'll select this other side and click paste. Now you can see the envelope is the same as the one over here, but we really want it to be mirrored the other way so that the big part is over here on the hips and the flatter part is between the legs. So you can try clicking this mirror button here, but take a look at what it does. It actually just mirrors it upside down, which isn't really what we want. So I wouldn't really recommend it. I'm just going to mirror it back the other way, the way it was originally. So what works better is to, again, go back to your control points and select all the control points on this, and then do a rotation. So if we do a local, yeah, there we go. And you can spin this whole thing around so that you've got something that more closely resembles what you want. Let's see, that's about right, I believe. Let's take a look at the other one. Well, it certainly looks more like it. Let's take a look in our user view. Yep, not too bad. Alright, and then let's take a look with the animation. Boy, that's looking pretty good. Nice and smooth here, no creases. Okay, so we've successfully copied and pasted and adjusted an envelope on the other side. This is probably a really good time to save. So let's do our save as again. The next thing to concern ourselves with is our character's little bottom there. His backside here. This tail is not being affected by any envelopes as far as I can see. Not that one. Let's get our wireframe view back. Let's see if it's affected by this one. Nope. Now we also have these two other envelopes in here. Let's get a front view again. These two right here for this link and that link, the two going down from the spine to the tops of the thighs. And these are often these odd-shaped envelopes here, kind of going to the side, and those are, I find those, that whatever they're affecting, it's usually not good, so I like to just reduce those down. Take the radial scale for both and then for outer to 0, so they don't affect anything. And then I just copy and paste that to the other side. Then you don't have these sort of weird twisty envelopes to have to deal with. So this one here, this is the one that should be affecting the tail, and it's not. So of course, we're just going to go ahead and use our control point. Pick one of those control points. And see now, these vertices are all, they have red on them to indicate that they are going to be affected. If we go to our smooth view, we can see that that's now true. Oops. So now his little tail will move along, so if we have him walking along, his tail isn't going to get left behind. Alright, let's take a look all the way up the rest of the spine. Oops, we got to go back to links. That looks pretty good. That could probably be a little better, but we'll leave that for now. Let's take a look in wireframe view. The arm is affecting all of the arm, which is good. The shoulder is affecting this. Oh, I see what's happening here. See, this envelope is going all the way out to here and affecting the arm. That's not good. So let's decrease the radial scale for both. And you can see the arm kind of coming back in the way that it should be. Except for this vertex right there. Oh, this one's too big too. So let's reduce the outer. Actually, that should be fine, because what it's doing is it calculates the envelopes when it's in this rest position that we're at frame 0, the position it was in when you applied Physique. So even if the radial scale goes out to here, that should be fine. If it starts going out bigger than that, it's going to start affecting the arms. But that should be fine there. That should be fine there. We've got something going on here. This vertex, for whatever reason, isn't going along with the arm. Oh, I see. It's not even big enough to affect that. So let's bring that out a little bit. There we go. Okay. Now we have a different problem, that the arm is, when it comes in, it's going into the chest. So what needs to happen is this armpit area needs to be affected partially by the chest and partially by the arm, so that it won't just rotate with the arm, it will rotate a little bit, but not a lot. So let's bring that in like this again. Let's see what happens. Alright, see if we pull this out a bit. Just looking at this side, don't look at the other side because we haven't done anything with that yet, but just looking at this, you can see it affecting that armpit area, and that looks pretty good, just like that. See that? We have a nice clean adjustment there. Maybe a little bit less. There we go. That should be really nice. Oh, look at that. So we don't have the arm passing into the body at all. Alright, so once again, a good idea to copy and paste, especially since all we've done is affect envelopes. We haven't done anything with control points, so we're not going to have any issues with mirroring or anything like that. So we can copy and paste over here. And, looks alright in the underarm. Let's see the shoulder here. I'd like to see, what would I like to see? Does that look good? Yeah, I guess it looks alright. One of the things is that this arm is going up, and you would never really do that. Just the arm. You would always have this shoulder coming up as well. This shoulder bone, this thing called the clavicle. Oops. There. See, that looks more realistic. That's more the way you would raise your arm, and that looks pretty good. See the way that the skin is sliding up here, up in the neck area and the shoulder? That looks alright. Let's just have a little quick tour through the rest of the envelopes. There's that neck one. That seems okay. Seems alright. Let's go into our shaded view so we can see a little better. It's okay. It's alright. Clavicle is affecting all this area. We might want to have this neck bone affect a little bit more area. Yeah, that might be better. Oh boy, that's beautiful. Okay. Well, this guy is looking pretty good. As far as we can tell with our simple animation test, with the legs scissoring and the arms going one way and the other. That's just a good simple test to give you an idea of how to fix the shoulders and the hips. So he's doing all right with those. So this is a good time to save. Okay, now we've got pretty good envelope set up here. So let's test it with a little more sophisticated animation, something with a little more motion in it. So to get ready to do that, let's turn off Auto Key, and we're also going to turn off Shaded here, and go back to the main physique level. And let's create a named selection set for the mesh and the eyes. Now the mesh is already selected, so we're just going to select the two eyeballs, which are sphere 1 and 2, and give them the name selection set mesh, so we can select them easily later on if we need to. And let's turn those see-through, Alt-X, and freeze them. Okay, now to load an animation on this, what we need to do is select any part of the biped and go to the motion panel. And here we have this load button. If you click this, you can pick a BIP file, which is a biped motion file that's already been created, and we can put it on this biped. Now the best place to find these is if you have the Learning and Training CD that comes with Character Studio, just pop that right in your CD drive. That's what we're going to do. If you don't have it, then you can do a search on your disk drive for any files with the extension BIP. There are some in tutorial folders. It doesn't really matter which one you load on here. Most of the ones that you'll find will give you the ability to test and just make sure that everything is moving along okay. And plus they're fun to load and play with. So let's go ahead and open, and we're going to go to the Learning and Training CD and to the tutorials folder, because I know of a couple of good ones in there. No, actually we want to go C Studio and tutorials, and let's go to the Motion Mixer folder, and let's load the one called Dynamic 3. We'll load that. Wait for that to load for a sec. It's coming off the CD. And now we can play the animation. and we see our character doing the motion that's in the BIP file. And it gives us a pretty good idea that the character is pretty well skinned. The envelopes are well set up. Everything's moving along well. Boy, that's one frantic Dino. Okay. Now, one problem we have is that the eyes have gotten left behind. The eyes need to be linked to the biped head, not to the mesh. The reason being, the mesh isn't really animated. The biped is animated. The mesh is deformed. We don't want the eyes to deform. We want them to just move along with the head. So we want to link them to the biped head. And you don't want to link them to the biped head before you apply Physique, because then it will treat the eyes like a bone. Anything linked to the biped is treated like a bone at the time you apply Physique. If you link it after you apply Physique, it just moves it along with it. Doesn't treat it like a bone at all. So now we have a problem, is that how do we get the eyes back in the head? And the way we do that is with figure mode. So if we select the head and go into figure mode again, you see the eyes are back in the right place. Going to unfreeze everything. And probably the best way to do this is to select the eyes here. And then we're going to use our select and link these to the biped head. Alright, now when we select any part of the biped and turn off figure mode, the eyes should move along perfectly with it, and they do. There we go. So just for kicks, let's take a look at what this guy looks like. First, we're going to need to select all the parts of the mesh and turn off see-through mode. And then let's select the biped. See, with our name selection sets, this is so easy. And then we'll hide all of the biped parts. So now we can go ahead and play this, and because he's low poly, he pretty much plays back in real time. Oh boy, he's looking pretty good. Aside from looking like he's pretty frantic or drunk or something. Okay, so this is a good time to save, even though we'll probably be using different motion. Let's just go ahead and save this. Let's take a look at some of the additional options you can use when you're creating a biped for use with Physique. So let's create a biped. Your first choice is you have a choice between the skeleton body type or the classic biped. This is the one we used up until release 3. Now we have this one available in release 4. It generally works better with most body types, especially human type characters. Now sometimes you're going to want to change parameters here, but most of the time you'll want to go to the motion panel and turn on figure mode, and then go to your structure rollout and change them there. This is sort of the equivalent of creating a box, and maybe you might change a few parameters on the create panel, such as the length or the width, but more likely you'll go to the modify panel and change them there. Here you go to the motion panel, turn on figure mode, and that's where you change your parameters. One of the most important ones is ponytail lengths. Now these are kind of hard to see unless you've got a wireframe. We'll zoom in into this area. Now you see these ponytail links being created. What this is a link that's automatically linked to the head, and you can move this base link. You can't move these two, but like the toes and fingers, you can move the base link, and you could have, say, two ponytail links, and you can use these. Oh, let's select that. Here we go. Where did it go? Come on. There we go. You can use these links as the jaw. So you could put these inside the jaw of an animal, and then you can animate these separately so that the jaw opens and closes. Another feature you can use is forearm twist. Now, sometimes you'll get into this situation with animation where you want to twist the hand and you want the wrist to twist a little bit too. So what you can do is use forearm twist, and this puts extra links here. So when you twist the hand, you see how the lower part of the wrist is twisting? This generally makes a more accurate animation. Now, if you're going to be posing a quadruped, such as an animal with a big beak like this, what you'll want to do is grab the lowest spine link here and bend the character over. Then you can take the legs, scale them, and fit the feet as best you can. Now with the hands, you're going to rotate those so that they sit on the ground like feet. And just fit it inside the body. Then you can also use tail links. These work like ponytail links. You'd fit them inside the biped's body, and you would apply physique as usual to make the biped be associated with the mesh. You can also then make the character walk by using IK blend on the hands and feet and making steps go forward.